Hello, friends. Welcome back to Align Vitality. I'm Tanya Engesether, your host. So glad you're here today. And we are actually in the middle of a series that I'm calling the Dying to Please series. And if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, I want to encourage you to go back and start there because we talked about what people pleasing actually is at a nervous system level, where it comes from, and what it is doing to your body physiologically. Your hormones, your gut, your thyroid, your mood, your sleep. It was kind of a meaty one, and it really lays the foundation for everything we're building on in this series. But today I want to go somewhere that I think is probably even cuts a little deeper, I guess, because here's what I've noticed, both in my own life and in the lives of the women that I work with and alongside. The hardest part of recognizing a people-pleasing pattern isn't the recognition itself, it's what comes right after it. There's this moment, and maybe you felt it, where you've finally maybe realized or named the pattern, you've seen it clearly, you understand it, and then a sort of unsettling question surfaces. What if I stop, who am I? Who am I underneath all of that? Because for so many of us, especially women who have been high achieving, deeply relational, faith-filled most of our lives, people pleasing isn't just something we do, it becomes who we are. It's the operating system underneath everything, the way we've navigated relationships, work, family, the thing that made us reliable, indispensable, loved, safe, or at least that's what we've come to believe and function like. And the idea of changing doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels like we're losing ourselves. And that's what I want to talk about today. Not as a problem that you can solve quickly, but as a real, valid, important part of the journey toward freedom, because I think a lot of women get stuck right here. They recognize the pattern, they feel the pull toward change, and then they feel the fear of losing their identity. And I don't want that to be you. I don't want you to get stuck. So today we're going to talk about identity, about the roles we've built our lives around, about the grief that sometimes comes with letting go of an old story, and about what it means to begin slowly, honestly, a bit imperfectly, to build your identity on something that does not shift with other people's needs, moods, or approval. Let's get into it. Do you want to recharge your energy, restore your mental clarity, and finally feel like yourself again? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Align Vitality, the podcast that offers faith and functional health strategies for high-achieving, health-conscious women in midlife who want to heal from chronic stress, body and spirit. I'm your host, Tanya Engesether, a certified functional health practitioner, Christian life coach, and fellow midlife woman who knows what it's like to look strong on the outside while struggling silently on the inside. Here, we get real about anxiety, brain fog, burnout, hormone shifts, and the hidden toll of chronic stress. And more importantly, we talk about the path to healing. Each week, you'll find practical strategies and faith-fueled encouragement to help you restore your God-given energy, calm your nervous system, and reclaim peace in this season of life. If you're ready to stop pushing through and start thriving in the abundant life you were created for, let's get after it. This is Align Vitality. So how does people-pleasing become identity? Well, let me start by explaining how this happened, because it doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen because we are careless. Identity at its core is the answer to the question, who am I? And for most of us, that answer was shaped long before we were old enough to choose it consciously. We talked last week about how people-pleasing often starts as a survival strategy. A child learning that keeping others happy kept things peaceful, they kept love secure, kept danger at bay. The child was not developing a personality flaw. She was developing a remarkably sophisticated adaptation to her environment. But here's what happens over time. The behaviors that kept us safe become habits. The habits become patterns. The patterns become personality, and the personality becomes identity. So the little girl who learned to read the room and manage the emotional climate around her grows into the woman who is known for always knowing what other people need, who's called maybe the glue of every group, who's the first one people call in a crisis, or the person they know will say yes, so the person they always ask, and the last one anyone thinks to maybe ask, how are you doing? Or do you have capacity for this? And she's proud of that in a way, because being that person feels meaningful. It feels purposeful. It feels like love and action in action, and it feels like service until it doesn't. Until she's lying awake at night with a body full of cortisol and a mind full of everyone else's problems, wondering how she got so tired. Until her body starts sending signals in her hormones, her gut, her fatigue, that the pace is not sustainable. Until she says, I don't even know what I want anymore. I've spent so long figuring out what everyone else needs that I genuinely don't know. That's the moment when people-pleasing has fully become rooted as identity. And that's the moment when the question, who am I if I'm not this, becomes not just philosophical but urgent. We've built our lives around roles, and I want to name some of these roles specifically because I think naming them helps us see them more clearly. And seeing them clearly is the beginning of having a choice about them. Maybe the role is the strong one. She's the one who holds it together when everyone else falls apart, who maybe doesn't cry or lose it in public, who processes her grief quietly and alone so she doesn't burden anyone, who has decided somewhere along the way that needing help is a form of weakness she can't afford. Maybe she's deeply admired and deeply lonely. Then there's the reliable one. She never cancels, she never drops the ball, she never lets anyone down. Her yes means yes, and her word is bond, even when saying yes required something she really didn't have to give. She's trusted, and she trusts few people with her own needs because she's learned that being reliable means being needed, and being needed feels like security. Then there's the peacekeeper. She can feel conflict coming from 3 rooms away. She smooths it over before it starts. She finds the diplomatic middle ground. She softens the hard edges. She makes sure everyone leaves the room okay. She's gifted at creating harmony, and she's not said what she actually thinks in longer than she can remember. There's the selfless one. She puts everyone first. Her needs are always the last consideration, if they're considered at all. She's spiritualized this, called it servant leadership, called it laying down her life in service, called it what Jesus would do. She's generous to a fault, and she is quietly disappearing. There's the capable one. She figures it out every time. Whatever needs doing, she does it. Whatever problem needs solving, she solves it. The phrase, I'll handle it, becomes reflexive. She says it before she even knows what she's agreeing to. She's indispensable, and she is exhausted in a way that a vacation cannot fix. Now, here's what I want to say about all of these roles with a great deal of gentleness. None of them are entirely wrong. Strength is a gift. Reliability is a virtue. Peacemaking is blessed. Generosity is Christ-like. Capability is something to steward well. The problem is not the role itself. The problem is when the role becomes the foundation, when your entire sense of self rests on being the strong, reliable, selfless, capable, peacekeeping one, and any threat to that identity feels like a threat to your existence. In that place, you are not living from freedom, you are living from fear. And fear, as we talked about last week, has a very specific physiological cost. Here's something I want to name really honestly because I think it gets skipped over in most conversations about breaking free from people pleasing. When you begin to let go of an identity that has organized your entire life, even when it's an identity that's been costing you, there is often some grief, real grief. Because you're not just changing a habit, you're releasing a version of yourself that kept you safe for a very long time. A self that was good at things, a self that was loved and needed and valued for very real contributions. You're saying goodbye to familiar, even if familiar was also painful. And the new self, the woman who sets limits, who lets people feel disappointed, who says, I don't know, or I can't, or that's not something I'm able to do right now. She is unfamiliar, untested, and at first, she often feels selfish in a way that is deeply uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Sit in that discomfort for a moment. Because the discomfort of becoming free is real. It's not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's not evidence that you should go back to the old ways. It is what it feels like to become someone new. And become someone new, as we talked about in the episode about Theo Vaughn, is exactly what Jesus offers. It is also exactly what Jesus asks of us. A new story always costs something. Usually it costs us the old story. And the old one, even when it was painful, was ours. It was familiar. It explained us to ourselves and to the people around us. Letting it go requires mourning it. So if you're in a season right now where you're beginning to recognize the pattern and it's bringing up sadness or disorientation or even fear, I want you to know that's not weakness or failure. It's the beginning of something honest and new. Now, this is the most important part of this whole conversation because the reason identity gets so tangled up in people-pleasing is ultimately sort of a theological problem. At the root of the pattern, underneath the fawning response, underneath the childhood conditioning, underneath the distortion of what we think is faithfulness or spiritual stewardship, is a fundamental question about worth. Am I enough? Am I valuable? Am I lovable? And somewhere along the way, the answer to those questions became conditional. Yes, if I'm needed, if I'm helpful, if I keep everyone around me happy and okay, if I perform well enough, give enough, show up enough, shrink enough. But that's a lie, a deeply embedded, deeply familiar, physiologically reinforced lie. And the truth that displaces it is not a self-help affirmation. It's a theological reality. Psalm 139 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made, not fearfully and wonderfully performed, not fearfully and wonderfully useful, not fearfully and wonderfully reliable. Made. Your worth was established in the act of your creation before you did a single thing. Before you were anyone's helper or anyone's strong one or anyone's first call in a crisis, you were made by God in His image. And that image bearing is the source of your worth, not your output, not your usefulness, not your capacity to hold everyone else together. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10 says, For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do. I want you to notice something in that verse. The good works come after the identity. You are first God's handiwork, His masterpiece. Some translations say, and then you are created to do good works. So the doing flows from the being. The service flows from the identity. But so many of us have had that reversed our entire lives. We've been doing in order to establish our being, serving in order to earn our place, giving in order to justify our worth. And the freedom that comes with truly, not just intellectually, but experientially receiving your identity as God's beloved, God's handiwork, God's image bearer before you do a single thing, that's not just spiritually transformative, it is neurologically transformative. When worth is no longer contingent on approval, the nervous system no longer experiences disapproval as a threat. And when disapproval is no longer a threat, the fawn response begins to quiet. The body begins to regulate. The hormones begin to find their footing. The healing that has been elusive starts to become possible. This is not metaphorical. This is the biological reality of what it means to be rooted in something that does not shift. So what's the difference between performing and living? I want to draw a distinction here that I think is really important, especially for women of faith who might be worried that releasing the people-pleasing pattern means becoming selfish or less Christ-like. There is a profound difference between performing an identity and living from one. Performing looks like, I give because I need to be seen as generous. I serve because being needed makes me feel valuable. I say yes because the alternative feels too dangerous to my sense of self. I hold it together because falling apart would mean losing control of how people see me. Performing is exhausting. It requires constant maintenance and vigilance. It is always one disappointment away from collapse, and it is, if we're honest, more about us than it is about the people we appear to be serving. Living from identity looks like I give because I am genuinely full and something in me wants to offer. I serve because I have heard a specific call in this moment and I have something real to bring. I say yes because this is a true yes. And when I say no, that is also a true answer, offered with grace and without apology. I am present with people not because I need their approval, but because I genuinely love them. Living from identity is sustainable. It does not deplete in the same way. It does not require the same level of maintenance. And paradoxically, it is far more genuinely generous because it comes from freedom rather than fear. It comes from service rather than selfishness. Galatians chapter 5 verse 1 says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." The yoke of people-pleasing is real, and Christ did not set you free from it so that you could pick it back up and call it servanthood. He set you free so that you could serve from freedom. And my friend, that version of you is not less loving. She is more loving because she is loving from a place that is genuinely full. So let's get a little bit practical for a moment because I think this conversation can feel very abstract if we don't bring it to real life. Rebuilding, your identity outside of people-pleasing does not happen in a moment. It doesn't happen because you listened to a podcast episode or had a revelation or prayed one prayer, though all those things can be part of it. It happens in small, repeated, often uncomfortable moments of choosing differently. And here's what that can begin to look like. So maybe at first it's just noticing. The most important work is simply paying attention, noticing when you are about to say yes out of fear or obligation versus yes out of genuine desire and capacity. Noticing when you are absorbing something that isn't yours to carry. Noticing when you have shaped yourself to fit the room and what it costs you to do that. You don't have to change it all at once. You just have to start seeing it. And then start asking a different question. Most people pleasers have an automatic internal question that runs in every situation, and that is, what does this person need from me right now? The new question, practiced slowly and with grace, is, what is actually true for me in this moment? What can I give? Not instead of caring about others, but alongside it. Then there's tolerating some discomfort of disappointing someone. This is the hardest part, and I won't pretend otherwise. The first time you say no to something that the old you would have automatically said yes to, it will probably feel terrible. And I'm not saying you should say no to everything. Service is important. Service is biblical. And the first time, but service from depletion and fear and obligation and to avoid conflict isn't really genuine service. Your yes should be your best yes. So when you do begin to say no, your nervous system will fire. The guilt will be real. The fear of what it means will be loud. And on the other side of it, you'll still be standing. The relationship will likely still be intact, and your body will have learned something new. And that is that disapproval is not death. Disappointing someone won't actually kill you. That starts to reprogram your nervous system, one small moment at a time. Now, if someone asks you who you are and your entire answer is about what you do for others, that's worth noticing. Begin to practice describing yourself in terms of who you are, what you love, what you believe, what moves you, not just what you produce or provide for other people. Start to think about who you are from a God's eye view. People pleasers are almost universally much better at giving than receiving. Receiving a compliment, an offer of help, an act of care without deflecting it, minimizing it, or immediately reciprocating it is genuinely difficult. But it is genuinely healing. So practice letting it land. Practice receiving. Let's close today with a little prayer. God, we come to you today carrying roles that have become too heavy to hold, and an identity that was built on sand instead of on the firm foundation of you. We confess that we have looked to what we do for others to tell us who we are, that we have measured our worth in usefulness, that we have confused performing with living and fear-driven giving with love. And God, we grieve what it has cost us, the exhaustion, the disconnection from ourselves, the needs we buried so deep we stopped feeling them. We ask you to meet us in that grief and then lead us out of it. Remind us today of what you said about us before we did anything, that we are your handiwork, your image bearers, fearfully and wonderfully made, beloved before we were useful. Begin the work of building our identity on that truth. And give us the courage, one small moment at a time, to live from that place instead of running from the fear of losing it. In Jesus' name, amen. Friend, the question, who am I, if I'm not the strong one, is not a crisis. It's an invitation. An invitation to find out who you actually are underneath the roles, underneath the performance, underneath the identity you built to stay safe. And I promise you, who you find is worth knowing. We're going to continue this series next week with something a little bit more practical. So I want you to tune in. Again, if you didn't listen to last week's, please do that. Until next time, my friends, lead well, live well, and be well. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. If today's episode encouraged or blessed you, would you please take a minute to leave a rating and written review on Apple Podcasts? It means the world to me, and it helps more women like you discover this message of hope and healing. If you're ready to take the next step in your functional health journey, join my interest list at alignvitalityhealth.com. And remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be medical advice, nor is it intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health. Until next time, I'm Tanya Engesether, reminding you that healing is possible and your best season is still ahead.